Calcivite bullets with a pigskin casing. Now you perfect slang like a gang of street masons. Scribe check, make connects. True pyramid architects. Replace the last name with an X. The man's got a God complex. So take the text and change the picture. Watch Muhammad play the messenger like holy Muslim scriptures. Take orders from only God, only war when it's jihad. See, Ali appear in Zaire to reconnect 400 years, but we the people, dark but equal, give love to such things. For the man who made the plan, remember when we were kings?
Don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot.
Put your guns away. You don't really have to take the fun away. Treating me like I'm a runaway, but turning me into a life of slavery.
Don't shoot.
I don't wanna die, but you're in a position where you gotta lie. I shouldn't have to run and out to be free. Living here shouldn't be suicide for me.
Don't shoot.
I don't wanna be a victim, listen. I wanna move to another type of rhythm, not heartbeats or cop beats. If you don't want me to spit, don't drop beats. I wear a crown, cause too many of my people getting beat down. Guns down, put your guns down. Trying to raise fists, live hard to mine. Brothers who kill other brothers are part of the crime. Don't shoot,
Don't shoot.
don't shoot,
Don't shoot.
don't shoot.
I just wanna fly away, cause Trayvon didn't get to see another day. And thanks to the bullets, you won't pull it away. Now the memory shirts come out to play. Now don't shoot. You took a life too soon. A brother from a mother won't see another moon. Tears on the wound, but now we ain't scared. The shots are on the tune. Don't shoot. Don't shoot. Don't shoot.
Not subject to
Be detained just cause you can't pronounce my name. You let me in the streets and made me feel ashamed. My skin shouldn't make me the cause of blame. Now don't shoot. And I know not to run, cause that'll lead to you. Pull your gun, no fun. Look, I'm somebody's son.
Stop and frisk indiscrimination.
Don't shoot. Don't shoot. Don't shoot. Oakland. Don't shoot. Sacramento. Don't shoot.
Shot down.
Don't shoot.
America, please
Don't shoot.
Put your guns away. You don't really have to take the fun away. Treating me like I'm a runaway, but turning me into a life of slavery. I don't wanna die, but you're in a position where you gotta lie. I shouldn't have to run and hide to be free. Living here shouldn't be suicide for me.
All right, rude boy, listen up. Black cop, black cop, black cop, black cop. Hey, black cop, black cop, black cop. Stop shooting black people, we all gonna drop. You don't even get paid a whole lot. So take your M16 and put your paw lock. Take your 45 and you put your paw lock.
You looking for your people
When you walk down the block, here in America, we have a drug spot. The black drug dealer just avoid black cop. They killing each other on the East Coast block, killing each other on the West Coast block. White police don't give a care about that. They're one that's killing each other over crack. Either way you put it, it's a black on black. Black cop, black cop, black cop. Black cop, black cop, black. Don't shoot me because of my race. Don't shoot my people because of my race. Look. 50 years ago, there were no black cops. You couldn't even run the drive, run the block. Recently, police trained a black cop to drive, run a block, and take the gunshot. This type of warfare isn't new or shock. It's black on black crime again, non-stop. Black cop, black cop, black cop, black, black cop, black cop, black cop. The black cop isn't the only obstacle. Black slave from black cop is not logical. It's psychological, man. Haven't you heard? Black cops kill black kid. Johannesburg. What's up, black cop? Hey, yo, what's up? Your authorization says you shoot the nation. Breaking it on me. The slave laws enslaved the black community. You can't play both sides of the fence. It's 2018, and Mac is a still 10. Black cop, black cop, black cop. Black cop, black cop, black. Woo, woo. That's the sound of that police. Come on. I know y'all know this. Woo, woo. That's the sound of, come on. That's the sound of the beast. Now here's a little truth. Open up your eyes while you take the boom back. Take the exercise. The word overseer. As an example. Repeated word quick like a crude voice sample. Overseer, 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 officer, 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 overseer, officer from overseer. You need a little clarity, English vocabulary, man. Check the similarities. Overseer rode around on a plantation. Officer was off patrolling the nation. The overseer could stop you what you were doing. The officer will pull you over when they're pursuing. The overseer has the right to get ill. If you fight back, the overseer can kill. The overseer has the right to arrest. And if you fight back, they put a hole in your chest. They both ride horses. After 400 years, we got few choices. The police really like to shoot their guns. With me on the street, we still on the run. Don't shoot me because of my race. Don't shoot my people because of my race. Come on.
We don't deserve to die in this place. Don't shoot. Get that gun out of my face. Don't shoot.
Come on.
Everybody raise your hands.
Don't shoot. Come on.
Black people, put your hands
Hey,
up.
shoot. Come on.
Better be for justice.
Don't shoot. Come on. Turn your hand into a fist. Don't shoot. Come on.
Everybody raise your hands.
Don't shoot. Come on.
Black people, put your hands
Don't
up.
shoot. Come on.
Better be for justice.
Don't shoot. Come on. Now turn your hand into a fist.
Wait, why you stop clapping? That's our future. Obviously standing on the shoulders of giants. Young, gifted, and black. I couldn't think of a more appropriate name. Thank you so much. Yes. So, are you ready? Nah, see, you delayed. There was a guy like, huh, he ain't talking. Are you ready? So tonight, following this event, we will be having a wonderful book signing of his book, The Education of Kevin Powell, right outside these doors in the table right outside here. Tonight, if you happen to just go outside and don't get a book, you can still enjoy some of Friday night at OMCA's block party happening outside. This wasn't the only crunk thing we had going on tonight. Is this crunk or what? And for those who don't know what crunk means, it's great, off the hook. You gotta break it down for some people. So, once again, my name is Ambassador Cantave, Public Engagement Program Manager of this fine museum of Oakland, California. And I have the privilege to bring to the podium tonight this great esteemed author, this great esteemed scholar. He even did a little something for hip-hop at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame somewhere down the line a few years ago. This fabulous gentleman is doing a 100-city tour, which is this tour, the Education of Us tour. And Oakland, are you in the house? Now, Oakland, do you know why you are in the house, Oakland? Because this is the first stop on a 100-city, 2-year tour. The education of, you don't hear me though. And I hope you here with us for like about, the full couple of hours we're gonna be having you here. A few housekeeping things. Since we intend to have you here a long time, if you need to run to the restroom, you can go right out these doors, straight down the hallway, to the next doors and towards your left. You'll find some bathrooms there, some orange awnings on the side. I didn't say that in the beginning. Please excuse me. But for the moment you've all been waiting for, I'm about to bust a rhyme. No, it's not. Put your hands together for the one and only Kevin Powell. Bring him up in here. This one's on.
Can y'all do me a favor while can we fill in down? Can we come down a little bit? And while y'all up, can y'all meet 3 or 4 or 5 people you don't know? Can y'all do that real quick? Can we do that, please? Come on, y'all.
And we do have some empty seats right over here if you all can fill it up. Make it like a living room, a real intimate affair here.
All right. Folks on the side, can y'all move over to the center? Folks on the side, can you move to the center? Please. I want to see everybody. Can you move to the center, please? Y'all didn't even really get up. I'm good, brother. This is for the audience, right? Okay. So I'm going to ask again, can we all come together in the center, please? Can we do that? Please. I'm saying please. All right, let me ask a question. Let me ask this question. How many of y'all are activist community organizers out there? How many of y'all care about people out there? Then if we care about people, we should want to be next to people. Don't be like us New Yorkers where we say we love people, then we're anti-people as organizers. And I can say that because I'm from Brooklyn. Can we move to the center, please? I'm just asking y'all, please, to move to the center. Let's fill it in. Don't be shy. I came 3,000 miles to start in Oakland. I'm just asking y'all, please, come on down. And it's cool. If you have to leave early, it's cool. Just move to the center, please. Someone can, you said the Bronx and where else? Where are you from? You came from the East Coast. That's what's up. What's the best borough? Brooklyn, of course. But the Bronx gave us hip-hop in that exhibit out there. Thank you. Who said Fort Greene? Oh, wow. Thank y'all. You gotta leave? You got seats here? Don't be shy. Please. The longer we take, the longer the folks on live stream are like, what's taking so long? I love you, Bay Area. There's a reason why I wanted to start in the Bay Area. If I didn't live in New York, I would live in the Bay Area. This is the only other place I could live in America. That's the truth. I love the Bay Area deeply. He said for one. DJ Styles in the building. Davey D's in the building. That's what's up. Lasana Hotep. So thank y'all. I want to thank y'all. Good? Can we dim the lights a little bit too? Can we just a little bit? Thank you. I want to thank God for this opportunity. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm never so religiously arrogant. Some people are religious, but so if you're Christian, if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, if you're agnostic or atheist, you got that right as well. I just hope that we all can agree that we're all part of the human family here. Can we agree to that at least, y'all? That's what I'm about. That's what I'm about. I want to certainly thank Ms. Lori Fogarty and Mr. Renata Guzman, Ms. Cynthia Taylor, Mr. Where's Mbessa? He went out already. Mbessa. I want to thank him. I want to thank Michael Silverman, Aaron Lim, and everyone. Can we give the Oakland Museum a round of applause? This is a great for an institution. And let me say this. I was just shouting you out, brother. Just thank you. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I was here a few years ago. I don't even know what year it was. And I think I had emailed you, Renee. I came to see the 1968 exhibit here, which was incredible. And one of the most powerful moments for me was when we all stood. It was people of all races, cultures, gender identities standing around the part around Bobby Kennedy. And it was multiple generations of folks. And as they showed the scene of Bobby's train when he was killed, moving down the East Coast of D.C., all of us were crying. It was a profound moment. And I think y'all know that this year, 50 years, makes the anniversary of Dr. King passing and also Bobby Kennedy passing. 2 years ago, I came to see the Black Panther exhibit. How many of y'all came to see that exhibit? Which was incredible. And so I have to acknowledge that this museum is doing some amazing work. Thank y'all for who you all, what you represent. I've been here a couple times. And just, the fact that you open it up to the community, because this is what this tour is about. And we specifically wanted to start this tour, do this tour, not on the college campus. I'm on college campuses all the time. We wanted to be in museums, libraries, community centers, progressive spiritual institutions, not the ones that take your money, progressive spiritual institutions that are really about serving the people. Are y'all with me out there? That's important to us. I want to, where's the DJ? I want to shout out the DJ. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you so much. Say your name nice and loud so everyone hears it. DJ Ladies, give her a round of applause. Thank you. Are any of the young poets still here? Any of the young poets? Please, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Brother Hadari, the youth are powerful. I want to just acknowledge y'all. I want to shout out everyone that's watching this on live stream. I want to acknowledge Brother Kumi, I love being black, Brother Shaka, Brother Ren, where's Brother Ren at? Somewhere in here. Brother Ren, just give them a round of applause as well. When I say community, we realized that we needed to videotape this and live stream this today, and these three brothers came through today. Thank you, DJ Styles and Lasana and Cheo Taimi, folks who recommended us. So thank you. And I'm just happy. I'm just happy, as Brother Investor said, to start this tour. 2 years, 100 cities, all 50 states is the goal. The Education of Us tour. And as I said a moment ago, I could live here in the Bay Area. It reminds me so much of New York City, especially Brooklyn, where I'm based at. I wasn't born and raised in Brooklyn. I was born and raised in Jersey City. But I've lived in Brooklyn longer than anywhere I've lived in the country. What's up, C-Dub? What up? That's my sister right there. And the Bay Area just has this energy, this vibe. I can't even tell you. The first time I ever came to the Bay Area back in the early 1990s, I just sat at Lake Merritt, because I had never seen a city with a lake in the middle of the city before. And I just kind of zoned out. I was like, this is dope. We don't have this in New York. We got potholes in New York. We got, but we don't have a lake in the middle of the city like this. I love the Bay Area because of the history of the music, I remember interviewing, where's Brother Disa out there? Where's Brother Disa? Is he in the room? Well, he was in here, Brother Disa, who's one of our hip-hop chess masters. I've interviewed him and several other people. I'm doing a book on Tupac Shakur right now. Some of y'all know that I interviewed Tupac many times when he was alive for Vibe magazine. And the thing that I love interviewing folks from the Bay Area, Davey D, Brother Atron Gregory, other folks, is that the long history of music that has come out of this area. The politics, the activism. I mean, my gosh, where do you start? Everyone from Harvey Milk to the Panther Party. When we talk about about hip-hop, and Brother Rene de Guzman knows this, when we created the first hip-hop exhibit, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, 15, 16 long years ago, when it came to the West Coast, the thing that I appreciated that Davey D and Ricky Vincent then is like, oh no, we can't have a hip-hop exhibit that does not include the great contributions of the West Coast, including the Bay Area. Are y'all with me out there? And I'll say it, even if hip-hop may have started in the Bronx, Uptown Manhattan, what we call Harlem, there was definitely a parallel energy happening on the West Coast at the same time. I'm saying that as a New Yorker, and so I just want to say I love y'all for that. And yep, I love Too Short too, for real. And then, of course, as I said earlier, my 14th book that's going to come out late 2019 is a biography of Tupac Shakur. And, he talks a lot about that period that he spent here in the Bay Area, how important it was for him, and shout out to Digital Underground and giving him a shot, and Layla Steinberg and all those folks. And so, let me do this first. I just want to do this because I think it's important. If we can just stand up for a second, this is the first stop on this tour. If you're able to stand, you're able to stand. Grab someone's hand, remember, you look at that. Grab someone's hand. So, why? Y'all all right? Hey, I'm a yogi. That's why I do it. Why am I doing this tour? It's definitely not because I'm getting paid for it, because I definitely am not getting paid for it. I just need to say that for the record. This is not some tour with corporate sponsors and Kevin Powell's lining his pockets. Actually, I'm spending money on this tour. But I'm doing it, number one, because I've been an activist now for 30 years plus, since I was a youth, since I was the same age as these great young people who just were on this stage. And my life is dedicated to service, to helping people. I can't imagine doing anything else other than being an activist, an organizer, someone who gives back to community. Are y'all with me out there? Yes. You know, that's important. And we've come full circle. If you've been an activist as long as I have been, and Brother Davey knows, and some of the other folks here, Brother Lasana knows, there have been times when the word activist was a popular word, and there have been times where I was actually embarrassed to say the word because people would make fun of people like me. But here we are today, including the young people who are protesting around the country today around gun violence. But, you know, we know who are really activists, who are really committed to our communities around the country. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. This is not glamorous work. This is thankless work. I get embarrassed. As I said to Brother Mbessa, you don't need to do a long introduction. I'm not into me. I'm into us, people, you know what I'm saying? And so this is why I'm doing a tour. Doing a tour because I've been blessed to be a public speaker. Brother Hadari, where you right there, you know, when he said that they take the young people overseas, they travel with them. I'm someone who, because I grew up in poverty, didn't get on a plane until I was 24 years old. And I've been blessed since then to see all 50 states in this country and 5 of the 7 continents, and being a speaker. And what started off as conversations where I would just want to talk to black folks, I would have folks who are white, who are Asian, who are Latino, Latinx, you know, Native American people of different backgrounds come up to me and say, well, I have some questions as well, you know. And so over time, I began to realize, hey, man, you know, if you're going to be a speaker, your job is not to just give these speeches that rile people up. I could do that, you know what I mean? But are we actually trying to bring people together? And as Brother Mbessa said, is this really about solutions and action steps, or am I just trying to hustle y'all for some books? You feel what I'm saying? Whether you buy books tonight or not is cool with me. You don't have to. More importantly, I want to pass the mic to you all. Can we say pass the mic? Pass the mic. And let's talk with each other and listen to each other. That's what I've gotten from public speaking for the last 25 years. And then I'm a writer. I'm an artist. I'm a creative person. Any artists out there? Any artists out there? All right. I started off in college as a writer. I was a youth poet myself, you know, and it's crazy to me hearing you all and how powerful you all are, because it says a lot about how much has not changed, because we're literally writing the same poems, but y'all are doing your own spin in 2018. Writing, art, whatever art that we do, in my opinion, art should not only be about reflecting what's going on, but as these young people did with us just now, how do we correct the madness out here? Y'all with me? And so, yeah, no, give them a round of applause. This is about them. Brother Mbessa is right. This tour is inspired by my most recent book called The Education of Kevin Powell, A Boy's Journey to Manhood. It's a collection, it's an autobiography. It took me 3 to 4 years to write it. Honestly, I had several nervous breakdowns writing it, because it is hard to look at your own life. It's hard to go back and revisit pain and trauma and violence and abuse and the things that unfortunately too many of us in this country have faced, regardless of our background. But what really started me thinking about this tour, and it's not a book tour, but I took the title from it. And I should say this, the education of Kevin Powell would not exist without titles like the education of Sonny Carson, without the miseducation of Lauryn Hill, without the miseducation of the Negro. Are y'all with me out there? You know, the education of Henry James. I mean, if we read, then we know that there's folks who came before me. I'm just putting my own spin on it, but I got so many people who started sending me personal letters and emails and saying, Kev, I read something in this book that really touched my life, you know, and I said, you know what, there's a lot of stuff going on in this country. And what's wrong with saying, hey, Oakland Museum or Library in Los Angeles next week and other places we're going, can we have space where we can bring people together and have some very serious conversations? What's wrong with that? When I think about where we are, you know, and this tour, I have to say this, my mother is a big part of this tour. Even though she's not here, my mother will never and has never been on a plane. She will never get on a plane. That ain't happening. But The reason why I say that is because the first teacher, when we think about education, well, who are our teachers? My mother, with her 8th grade education, is the first teacher I ever met in my life. I'm very clear about that. And so much of what I do, who I am, comes from my mother who raised me by herself. And, you know, I can definitely say, when I look at my own life, which I'll share a little bit with in a moment, my mom has an 8th grade education. I went to college. My grandmother, my mother's mother, could not read or write. So clearly there has been some progress in this world, in this country. The fact that people of different backgrounds are sitting in this room right now, sitting civilly, says that there's been some progress. And I think there's something wrong when we can't even acknowledge anything. And I'm talking to my folks who call themselves revolutionaries, militants, progressives, etc., because I'm all of those things. You're looking at someone who has been Kevin Powell, Kevin X, Brother Kajati, Brother Kwesi. Y'all feel what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Every iteration you can think of around activism and so-called, you know, progressiveness or revolutionary stuff. But at some point, I think those of us who call ourselves progressive don't do what my sister, my Chinese American sister, Ajin Poo, has said. You got to take pride in some of the small victories along the way. You know what I mean? It's a victory that my mama had me by herself, and I'm standing here right now. Y'all feel me? Because I'm a black man in America, and this is mad real, you know. But we also cannot ignore the fact that there is still a lot of problems that we've got to deal with in this country. I mean, young poets, any of the poets to the left, put your hands up again, just for a second. The poets who are here. I mean, maybe I'm miscounting, Brother Hadari, but I heard at least 2 pieces, if not 3, that dealt with racial profiling and police brutality. Am I right? I mean, where do you start? I can't even go to Starbucks. I can't even go to Starbucks and sit there and just chill out. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I've been to Starbucks all over the country. And every time I go to Starbucks, people are sitting there, they ain't buying coffee. They're not buying anything. They're using the Wi-Fi for free. And these 23-year-old black men who turn out to be real estate folks, business entrepreneurs, are just sitting there. And because of the, you know, I don't even want to say racial climate because this country was founded on racism. This is not new. This has been there all along. When people say racial tension or racial climate, it makes it sound like racism disappeared for a little while. And then because Donald Trump came around, then it's back. But I'm like, during the 8 years that Barack Obama was president, in fact, January of 2009, when Barack Obama was about to get inaugurated, Oscar Grant was killed right here in the Bay Area. So how's this racial tension or some racial climate? And then we know Black Lives Matter was created during the Obama years. Y'all with me out there? Racism is race plus power equals racism. Who has the power? Who doesn't? Who has the power to dictate what skin color is acceptable and not considered a threat, and which skin color in a particular society is not threatening? Are y'all with me out there? Racism means I get to dictate what images we see in the mass media culture over and over again, how we see those images. Racism means that I can say to Colin Kaepernick, you know, someone who is protesting peacefully and civilly, that somehow he's an aberration just because he's a black man who has the audacity to use his mind and not just want to play football. Y'all with me out there? I mean, racism means, my gosh, you know, and I commend Sister Lori and Brother Renee, because this museum is so different than a lot of institutions I've been to around the country where they don't even try to be inclusive of all different types of people. I thank you, Oakland Museum, for being inclusive. You know, seriously. Racism means in other places, not like the Oakland Museum, people make all kinds of excuses why there's not diversity in the staff, why there's not diversity in the exhibits, you know? And this is where we are. Racism. I mean, my gosh, why do I have to sit here and listen to teenage young people of color talk about the same stuff I talked about 30 years ago? It's called racism. It's called racism. And the reality is, and let me say this to my white sisters and brothers, even, you know, I'm glad that folks are here. It can't just be people of color challenging racism. It has to be white sisters and brothers who are benefiting from skin privilege in this country, taking a stand. One of my heroes who was in this museum in the exhibit, 1968, Bobby Kennedy, a wealthy white brother, Irish-American brother. The Kennedys are considered royalty in this country. But when his brother John was assassinated in 1963, he had a profound spiritual transformation. For the first time in his life, he understood, because his brother got killed on national TV, what trauma and pain felt like. In the last 4 or 5 years of Bobby Kennedy's life, he's in places like California, working with folks like Dolores Huertas and Cesar Chavez, and working with black folks and people of color, because he began to develop something that we need called compassion and empathy, and realizing there's nothing wrong with having privilege if you use that privilege to challenge oppression. Are you willing to challenge oppression? That's the question. I don't want to hear any more of my ancestors weren't here and they didn't do well. You benefited from what your ancestors laid down. That's called racism. And let me say this, and I say this in my next book. My next book is going to come out in the fall, September 4th. It's called My Mother, period, Barack Obama, period, Donald Trump, period, and the Last Stand of the Angry White Man, period. And it's a collection of essays. And one of the things I say in the essays, as a pro-feminist man who does not support patriarchy, sexism, which I'm getting to next, y'all, I can't help but think about, as I was writing about my mother, who has lived through racism and sexism and classism her entire life, because she was has been a poor black woman in this country. No one was saying #MeToo because she was black and a woman. And my friend Tarana Burke, who created #MeToo 10 long years ago, created it because she noticed that the black and Latina young ladies that she was working with, poor women, young girls of color, were dealing with all forms of sexual violence, but no one cared about it until some of our white sisters from Hollywood started talking about it. And so when Brother Ambassador talks about the intersectionality, we need to be clear about the fact that even certain voices are listened to very differently than other voices. That's called racism. Y'all with me? A poor black woman's voice should be as important as a wealthy white sister's voice, period. If we can't get to that point, there's no such thing as intersectionality. Are y'all with me out there? So we got to challenge racism every step of the way. Every step of the way. We got to challenge the education that we've been given, which is rooted in racism. What else we got to do? It's not just racism. We got to talk men. And I wish there were more men out here, but I hope some are listening and watching on live stream. The sexism, just like this country was founded on racism, this country is founded on sexism. All men are created equal. Okay. Not if you're a woman. Not if you're a girl. About 2 or 3 years ago, I did a conversation in Berkeley with my dear friend and mentor, Eve Ensler, who created the Vagina Monologues. And she has said famously a few times, if men specifically, if we got as excited about ending violence against women and girls as we do about the Super Bowl, it would end instantly. I mean, Eve is dope. So is Bell Hooks, who I love. And it took me a long time to understand this into my early 20s, my own toxic behavior that I talk about in The Education of Kevin Powell. But how am I going to say I'm anti-oppression and then I turn around and be oppressive to other people? So we have to the folks who are identified as males out here, or if you're raising a son or sons, we've got to challenge patriarchy every step of the way. I mean, I think back to October when #MeToo exploded. They said there were 12 million people who said #MeToo on Facebook. The vast majority who identify as women and girls. That includes my mother, y'all. She ain't on social media, but she had told me stories years back about the harassment that she experienced. My wife has a choreo play called She, a choreo play. It's about violence against women and girls. It's about empowerment. It's about healing. most of the women in her cast are survivors. All different races, all different cultures. Back to Eve Ensler, men out there, 1 out of 3 on the planet, over 1 billion. We've got some serious, serious work to do. And Bell Hooks said it to me years ago. Gloria Steinem has said it. Eve Ensler said it. Sexism will not end until we men and boys actually make it in. Because we benefit from it. It's really, really basic. And let's bring it back to Colin Kaepernick for a second. Colin Kaepernick is basically whitelisted for the National Football League. Whiteballed for the National Football League. But they have so many men in the National Football League who have battered and abused and beaten up women who keep getting contracts. So that says something about our priorities. Or when we talk about Super Bowl week, the number of sex trafficking things that are going on. And so I even say to y'all who are football fans, and I can't watch football anymore. Between the concussions and the treatment of women and the hypocrisy around Colin Kaepernick, I'm good. Because I say to myself, in supporting football, I'm essentially supporting patriarchy, misogyny, sexism. Yeah, I am. And I can't do it. And I'm supporting violence in a very profound way because these players are destroyed for the rest of their lives. And I love sports. I grew up watching football, growing up playing football. But I'm good. Racism, sexism, but we can't stop there. There's this thing called classism. Where are we when we talk about the education of America? The reason why I wanted to do this tour, I don't know about y'all, but the way I was trained as an activist is that you don't just use terminology if you don't know what the words mean. Classism is real simple, y'all. If anyone in this room loosely uses words like ghetto or hood or trailer trash or poor white trash or rednecks or illegal aliens to describe poor people of any background, you are practicing classism. Classism means that you walk into the Oakland Museum, and if you don't bother to speak to the security workers, the people giving the tickets out, the people serving the food, if you think you're somehow better than the workers in this institution, you're practicing classism. Classism means that you think because of your status, your degrees, whatever you have, you somehow have superseded other people. I bring it back to Dr. King. This man had a PhD, Nobel Peace Prize. But at the end of his life, he did 2 things that were very, very profound. He came out against the Vietnam War, because he talked about the evils of racism, greed, or what some folks call capitalism, and militarism. And then he also began to organize something called a Poor People's Campaign. And he's in Memphis, Tennessee, where he got killed. And who was he working with, y'all? Garbage men, sanitation workers, working class black men who wore signs that said, "I am a man." It was Dr. King who said there is dignity in all work. But we got some folks, including folks who call themselves progressive, who are some of the most bourgeois and elitist people I've ever met in my life. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but when I came into this space, the DJ will tell you, I came up to her, I went to the folks working the cameras. I'm like, I got to acknowledge every human being who is working. That's how I get down. Because if I diss them, then I'm dissing myself. Some of y'all may not like what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't care if you love or hate Cardi B's music. We can have debates all day about hip-hop. But let me say this. I'm listening to people dish her how she speaks. I'm like, okay. I'm from New York. Know what I'm saying, son? I'm from New York. You know what I mean? And like, yo. And yes, we do say yo a lot. Just like y'all say hella a lot. You know what I'm saying? Because wherever you're from, you're going to speak in the vernacular of your community. And some of us are fortunate to be able to be multilingual. You know what I mean? I can speak like this and be quite loquacious. Or I could be like, what up, son? All right? You know what I mean? Or, hola, ¿cómo estás? ¿Qué pasó? You feel what I'm saying? I'm listening to people diss her. Classism, people dissing how people speak. You need to speak better English. Well, if you've ever been to England like I've been to England many times, you'd realize none of us in America actually speak English at all. We speak Americanese. And then people saying, coming off as they're embarrassed by her. Let's bring it back to sexism, which was number 2, tying it with classism. I've said for years that stripping for women of color in my community is often the equivalent of drug selling. It's an economic necessity. Doesn't mean that people want to sell drugs. People want to swing from poles. But when there's so few jobs, and unless you are actually in the community the way some of us are on a regular basis, providing some alternatives, like my brother A.T. Mitchell in East New York, Brooklyn, which is one of the most incredible communities in America, and also one of the poorest. He has an organization called SUV/Man Up, and then there's an organization for women as well. Most of the people that they work with come out of the projects. Most of them are formerly incarcerated persons. They don't condemn the people. They meet the people where they are, and then how can I lift them up? And so when I first heard Cardi B say, I don't gotta dance, I make money moves, I understand what she was saying from a class perspective. Y'all got an exhibit out there called Respect, right? And guess who created hip-hop? The same Dr. King who organized a poor people's campaign, classism, y'all. Well, hip-hop was created by poor Latinos and Latinas and poor West Indians and poor African Americans on the East Coast, and then poor Chicanos and poor African Americans on the West Coast. Poor people created this culture that's now been around for 4 or 5 decades. That's become a global industry. The same poor people, just like Cardi B. Are y'all with me out there? But we can't stop at classism. We also got to talk about, things like homophobia and transphobia. Well, I remember once, years ago, maybe about 10 years ago, we were doing a State of the Black Male tour around the country. One of my books, Brother Lasana, has the first essay in it. This is one of our brilliant scholars in California, in the country. In Brooklyn, I got emails from people, Brother Kevin, we're with you, but leave the gay stuff alone. And I was like, okay. I'm a heterosexual black man, but at some point in my life, back in the 90s, an elder from the South said to me, how can you say you love Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Nikki Giovanni, a whole bunch of folks, and then you homophobic, or add to it transphobic now, or heterosexist, right? How can you say you love Dr. King, and then you ignore the fact that one black man who was gay named Bayard Rustin was the principal organizer of the March on Washington? And then another gay black man is one of the writers that most people cite as one of the greatest essayists ever, James Baldwin. You say you love Duke Ellington, but you forget that his partner writing with him was named Billy Strayhorn. Y'all with me out there? I am going to say it again. How can you say you're anti-oppression and then you turn around and hate on other people? About 15 years ago, Ras Baraka, who's the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, one of our great poets, his father was the late Mary Baraka, his mother is still alive, Amina Baraka. Ras's younger sister, Shani Baraka, lesbian sister. She and her partner went to the home of her oldest sister and her estranged husband. The estranged husband was estranged because he had been beating savagely Shani's oldest sister. The family had told Shani, stay away from this man because he's crazy. And guess what, y'all? The man was an activist in the community. When Shani and her partner, Ray Sean, got to the house that particular day, they both were shot and murdered by the husband of this oldest man. I went to the funeral, 2 small caskets. These women were barely 5 feet tall. And when I say we cried, I felt like I was sinking through the church pews. And I remember one thing I said to myself, and I had already been outspoken about my support of marriage equality, of gay rights, queer rights in all forms. But for the rest of my life, I'm not going to remain silent and quote unquote leave the gay stuff alone. If my sister, brother, them, him, her, however they identify themselves, is suffering in any way simply because of who they are, then I'm suffering as well. You know what I'm saying? And so, for me, when I talk about education, it means all of us. It means I don't support Islamophobia. I don't support anti-Semitism. I don't support ageism. I don't support ableism. You know what I mean? I thank people like the Bay Area activists, activists like Leroy Moore and Alice Wong, who talk over and over again on social media, educating us right out of the Bay Area about our disrespect for people who are quote unquote disabled. And so what I'm getting at is that, again, we can't just be opposed to stuff that's convenient for us. We got to develop what Bobby Kennedy began to develop, which is empathy for all kinds of people. Because if we don't do that, not only are we ignorant, we're practicing what I call enthusiastic ignorance. And enthusiastic ignorance leads to what? Hatred, fear of the other. And how many of us in this room at some point have been the other? I could put both my hands up, my feet up, everything. That enthusiastic ignorance leads to the division. You know how y'all didn't want to sit together at first? But y'all are not ignorant. I'm not saying, I'm not saying that. But I'm like, what's wrong with sitting together for about an hour or 2 hours? What's wrong with that? With some folks we don't know. And we know that ignorance, fear, hatred, division leads to incredible violence. Let's be honest, y'all. How many people in this room have been violent in their lifetimes? Look at those hands. Even children have their hands up. I'm going to say this. This country was founded, quote unquote, on violence, the genocide of indigenous people that we call Indians and Native Americans, the genocide of Africans who were kidnapped from Africa, my people, and turned into slaves and built the economic infrastructure of this country, the violence against women, the violence against queer people. If we really go through the history, violence against Japanese people, Chinese people, violence against Jewish people, violence against Irish people. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? We can go down the whole list. Everyone in this room, at some point, how we look at Latinos, Mexican folks, want to build a wall. Talking about building a wall is violence. Poverty is violence. And so when I think about it like that, I'm like, I haven't had a fight, thank God, physically in 14, 15 years. And I think back, one of the hardest things about writing The Education of Kevin Powell is going back and reflecting on all the violence that had been normalized in my life. So the question I think we should all ask ourselves is, we talk about the education of us, who are we? Who are we? Who are we? Where did we come from? How did we get here? My cousin Angela's in the audience. She knows we from South Carolina. We are proud Geechees, y'all. Low country, South Carolina. My mother lived in a two-room shack. Her father, mother, 4 girls, 1 boy. They were so poor that it was normal for them to have some syrup and pour that into a bowl. That was the meal. They were so poor that the 4 girls who were close in age would sometimes go to, there was one dress and they would take turns on part of me going to school. This is the poverty that my family, at least my part of the family tree, comes from. My mother started picking cotton when she was 8 years old. She had no choice. She's now going to be 75 this year. I've watched my mother since she retired 13 years ago, her body just deteriorate. Why does she deteriorate? Because she has dealt with racism and sexism and classism her entire life. And she's had back-breaking work her entire life because the racism, the sexism, and the classism prevented her from even getting an education, y'all. Y'all with me out there? Yeah. And so this is why I get mad when people diss Cardi B. I'm like, have you lived in Cardi B's shoes? Have you lived in my mama's shoes? Because if Cardi B speaks so-called broken English, so does my mama. And it took me years until I got to the poetry, the work of people like Paul Laurence Dunbar, and their eyes were watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I was like, wait a minute, my mama has been speaking beautiful poetry all this time, but I was made to feel ashamed of who she was. Poverty is a form of violence. I learned when I was an adult that my mother's grandfather, my great-grandfather, Benjamin Powell, owned 400 acres of land in this part of South Carolina, early 1900s. You know what I'm talking about. My great-grandfather, Benjamin Powell, also was the cook in the community. So he cooked food for black folks and white folks. This is during Jim Crow segregation. Black folks and white folks lived together, but we know there was white supremacy. That ain't new, is it? We discovered these terms in 2018, like, well, I got a new term. No, this has been around for a long time. Because my great-grandfather, one day, his wife, my great-grandmother, got a knock on the door saying that he had choked on some of his food, And somehow they found him in some water, and he was dead. And oh, by the way, we're going to take 397 of these 400 acres of land from you for 1 penny each, and we're going to leave you with 3 acres. That's where my mother was born. Y'all with me out there? And so it bothers me when people keep saying, oh, this is so bad in the Trump years. I'm like, well, where have you been your whole life? What history books have you been reading? Because you clearly have not been reading Howard Zinn's The People's History of the United States. You have not read Lerone Bennett's Before the Mayflower. You never watched Eyes on the Prize. It's on YouTube for free, y'all, all 14, 15 parts. You clearly never listened to Malcolm X. You never heard of Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, right? You missed all of that. But you're in shock now. Okay. My mother and 2 of her sisters, my Aunt Bertie, my Aunt Kathy, did what many black folks have done. We got to stop saying that America is a nation of immigrants. It's offensive to Native Americans, and it's offensive to African Americans. Yes, there's many folks from other parts of the world here, but we are conveniently leaving out Native American people and what black folks have had to go through. And just because black folks who are black Americans, African Americans who identify as such, didn't immigrate from outside the country, guess what? There's always been an internal immigration going on. How do you think black folks got to the West Coast? We had to come from somewhere else. You talk to folks in the Bay Area, San Leandro, Hayward, Union, Oakland, they're like, my people from Texas, my people from Louisiana, my people from Alabama. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Well, my family moved up, my mother and 2 sisters moved up to Jersey City to the north. Why did they go to Jersey City? Because we had relatives in Jersey City. Just like Italian Americans and Irish Americans and Chinese Americans, we go where we have relatives at. Are y'all with me out there? You know? And when they first got to Jersey City, the poverty is real. They shared 1 room and 1 bed together. This is where they come from, you know? Why am I bringing all this up? We cannot get to the education of us if we're not willing to have honest conversations about how we came to be who we are tonight in this room. Are y'all with me out there? Enough of the lying and distorting and not wanting to talk about stuff because it's uncomfortable. How did you get here? How did your people get here? At some point, my mother, in her early 20s, met my father. She fell in love with my father. My father fell in lust with her, and I was conceived. My father was in his early 30s. He owned property in Jersey City. He was also from South Carolina, not the same part as my mother. He had money. He was a truck driver. He simply chose not to participate at all. My mother literally took herself to the hospital and gave birth to me. She literally, when she got home, maybe a few days later, she walked up the street to a neighbor and said, "What should I name him?" And the woman said, "Kevin," and that's how I was named. I asked my mother, you know, when I got to be grown, how come I don't have a middle name? My mother said, I didn't have time for all of that. She was like, Kevin, got it, let's keep it moving. And it's mad real like that. And if you come from poverty like I do, you understand. Because now, I'm being raised by a woman with an 8th grade education, on welfare, food stamps, government cheese, and a pound of poverty I wouldn't wish on anybody. Anybody. My mother would say to me, you don't know poverty unless you came up in the South. I'm like, what I do know, growing up in the North in a ghetto with no space, us living on top of each other, is that I got 1 pair of shoes and 1 pair of sneakers. And if I run holes into these shoes or sneakers, there are no new shoes or sneakers. You put cardboard or newspaper at the bottom of your shoes. What I know is that we lived in places where there was rats and roaches. There was not mice, rats and roaches that was so normalized. I was actually shocked when I went places where there were no rats and roaches. What I do know is when I was growing up in the wintertime, and y'all know it's cold back east, you were lucky to have hot water in the wintertime. This is where I come from. Who cares about the 13 books? Who cares about all the stuff on the resume? I will never forget the trauma of poverty and how it affected me. Y'all with me? That's why I don't like terms like ghetto, hood, trailer trash, poor white trash, rednecks, illegal aliens. Because when you're dissing them, you're dissing me. 5 things saved my life in spite of the poverty, the fear that we had, because I don't know about y'all, but we were scared we weren't going to make it to the next day. The hopelessness. You know what I mean? I think about Brother Lasana, if I can share this, you know, we're brothers because we talk about our similar experiences. I mean, imagine growing up where even if you're in beautiful California, but you have a family that's been sucked into the prison industrial complex, and so your regular trips are not going to the beach, but going to prison. How that affects your psyche. Y'all with me? What saved my life? Faith, believing something greater than yourself. You know, I got a lot of problems with church. I ain't gonna lie. But I also will not lie and say that, you know, something my mother instilled in me that you gotta believe in something. It don't gotta be God. You don't have to be, you know, believe in that. You don't have to believe in organized religion, but you gotta have some feeling that there's a better life for you and that you deserve better. You know? My mother instilled that. What saved my life? Number 2, my mother's vision. My mama went how far in school, y'all? 8th grade. But from the time I was 2, 3, 4 years old, this woman who did not read any books, there were no books in the house, said to me, you're going to college, you're going to college, you're going to college, you're going to college. That had a profound effect on me because what she was doing, my mother, who was born on August 28th, 1943, she turned 20 on the same day that Dr. King gave the I Have a Dream speech. Even though she did not march and protest, because there wasn't a lot of us who were doing it, but something about that period called the Civil Rights Movement, and I say thank you to the elders in the room, thank you to the elders in the room. There was something about that. You know, when I met Brother Hadari's mother, I'm like, you know, there were folks who were doing the work. They don't realize how they touch people like my mother and put something in her to say, I may only have an 8th grade education, but I'm going to put this boy on my shoulders so he can see some things and do some things that I can't do. It's called sacrifice. What else saved my life? Number 3. It's called education. Mama didn't tolerate bad grades, which means I had to be an A student the whole way. My mother was proud of that. Here she is, speaking with her southern dialect. Her little boy in kindergarten is testing on the 3rd grade level. They're like, well, how did this happen? Because Mama was preparing me. She literally gave me everything she knew. When I got to the 5th or 6th grade, y'all, my mother couldn't help me with schoolwork anymore. I was on my own, you know? When I got to high school, there was no preparation for college. All I knew was my mama said when I was 3 or 4 years old, you're going to college. And what I knew is that I need to bring these applications from college home to my mother and just say, Ma, you ain't got to read all this, but just sign here by the X. And here's the financial aid forms too, just sign here by the X. This is where I come from, y'all. You know what I mean? What else saved my life? Work ethic. A lot of us have made peace, as James Baldwin said in The Fire Next Time, with being mediocre. A lot of us are lazy. We do enough to get by. And I'm talking about folks with PhDs, master's degrees, MBAs, GEDs, no degrees. I can't imagine, you know, one reason why I admire my friend Carolyn Winsinger, C-Dub over here, is because she is a worker. You know what I mean? Brother Davey D, Lasana are workers. No excuses. We gotta do the work. While we're complaining about Donald Trump, my first question is, what are you doing? What work are you doing in the community that you live in to counter all of this? Or is your only thing is going to be reactions to other people? And then the last piece, we got to find something that we're passionate about. How far did I say my mother went in school? But when I was 8 years old, my mother and I took a walk one day through drug needles, liquor bottles, half-eaten chicken on the streets, and went to the library. My mother was like, you're going to get a library card, and I'm going to get a library card. And I was allowed to roam the children's section, and at a certain point, I discovered the sports section. And I mean a lot of people. How many of y'all out there, let's be honest about it, can we say no judgment? How many of y'all don't like to read? Don't like to read. No judgment. Okay. Well, guess what? When I speak to audiences that are mostly young people, 30 and under, 25 and under, many say I don't like to read. Why don't they like to read? Because of the BS that they're given in school on a regular basis, and they don't see themselves in the textbooks at all, right? Well, my response is always find something that you're passionate about. And what was I passionate about? DJ Styles, it was sports. So the first books that I read were sports books. Basketball, football, baseball, you name it, I love sports. That's how I found my passion. These 13 books wouldn't exist without that. And yeah, I'll take it back. Yep, I was an A student coming up, but it took me years to realize that an education is actually bankrupt if you're not learning about yourself. Like I can say here proudly now, I'm an African. I'm real clear that I'm an African. I'm an African. I'm an African. I'm an African. But how can you say you've been educated if you're Jewish, Italian, African-American, West Indian, Mexican, Salvadoran, Nicaraguan, whatever your background is, or a combination of identities, and you don't know anything about what runs through your veins? How can you say you're actually educated? Or if you do know something about who you are, and you're ashamed of, embarrassed of it as the way I was, where I thought that something was wrong with my hair, something wrong with my skin color, something's wrong with my nose, my lips. I mean, one reason why I love the Black Panther film so much, you know what I mean, is because every major character in that film is dark complexion, for once. You know what I mean? I'm like, now some folks may not understand why that matters, but if you've been taught your whole life, back to racism, that whiteness or lightness is superior, and that everything else is ugly and unattractive, and that certain types of hair is better than other types of hair, if you have hair, you got good hair. Even if you don't have hair, you have good hair. Because we make baldies fly too. But education should not teach you to hate yourself. It's real simple. Education should not teach you that the world is just war and violence. Education should not teach you that the Greeks did this, the Romans did that, as if folks in other parts of the world, be it China or parts of Africa, were not be as creative, if not more creative too. When I saw that movie Hidden Figures, and you saw those powerful black women, they should have called the movie Hidden History. Because that's what often happens. The histories of people of color, of women, of working class or poor people, of queer people, of disabled people, should I go on, the others are often left out of how we're educated. And you wonder why so many people are deeply self-hating. And so when I think about it, it wasn't until I got to college, and not because of college, but because who I met in college at Rutgers University in New Jersey on a financial aid package, because that's the only way I was able to go to college, that I was introduced to black history. Well, why is that important, Kevin Powell? Well, one, black history is American history. Vietnamese history is American history. Jewish history is American history. Irish history is American history. Equally. But I'm saying to myself, how could I go through 18 years of life and not learn any of this stuff? How could I? And I don't know about y'all, but I was angry, and I stopped eating white bread and stopped drinking white milk, and I don't feel that way now. But, you know, let's put it just like this. Ladies, how many of y'all are angry about, as we're in the middle of the hashtag Me Too movement, how many of y'all feel justifiably angry about sexism? Oh, yeah. Well, guess what? The same thing applies if you happen to be a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender person around homophobia, transphobia. The same thing applies if you happen to be a person of color around racism. Because there's this piece of you as you're realizing, wait a minute, I've been suffering through this silently, and I've got to say something. And so when I think about the education of us, this is a necessary journey. And so I became an activist, a writer, and honestly, can we close the door back there? Oh my, you don't gotta, no, we have to be respectful though. That defeats the whole purpose of the tour. And then they'll say I said it. On Twitter. Kevin Powell said, hush your mouth. Because that's what happens. Wow. Which leads to my next point. Even though I became woke, I still had some serious issues around anger and violence and how I treated people and how I treated myself. Because just because you woke don't mean that you're healthy, spiritually or emotionally, you know? And this is what we got to think about when we think about the education of us, because we know that, you know, people laugh at Donald Trump, but the thing is, I say all the time, he ain't actually that abnormal for most of us who disrespect each other, who talk down to each other. I mean, I pay attention on social media every single day. I get people calling me names every single day. I'm like, what is going on here? I was violent. I was disrespectful toward men and toward women. Nothing to lie here, because I feel like we can't truly be educated if we're not willing to be transparent as well and honest about who we are and understanding that hurt people hurt other people, which means some of us, myself included, have pushed people, have hit people, have bitten people, have thrown things at people. Violence, because violence is normal in this society. And the only thing I can say is that I realized at a certain point, Kevin, I need to get some help. Thank God for therapy, mental health. Thank God for therapy. I remember going to therapy, and the therapist, a man, black man, said to me, you know, it's clear to me no one has ever told you that they love you in your lifetime. Well, my mother does love me, but she was never told that she's loved, so she didn't know how to say it to me. You know what I mean? And the deep thing about my mother now, I've been taking care of her for the past 2 years, and she's been sick. It's the first time in my life, I'm a grown man, y'all, that I'm actually able to hug my mother and hold her hand because she needs it. And one of the most poignant moments I've had was a couple months ago when my mother fell out of her favorite chair on the floor, and here I was holding my mother. And I'm thinking about all the years of the violence, the verbal violence, the physical violence. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You know, and I used to think it was just black folks, but I have friends who are Jewish, who are Italian, who are Mexican, who are different parts of the world. A lot of us are damaged, are very damaged. And we pass this along like family heirlooms. And so I said, man, therapy, making a conscious decision, and this is work. You can't just erase behavior that you've been stuck in for 18 years, 25 years, even 50, 60 years. You have to consciously want to evolve, which is, to me, true education. I was one of those folks who experienced success early, quote unquote, whatever that word means. I mean, MTV, Vibe magazine, covers with Tupac Shakur, but at the same time, I'm hiding behind an increasing dependency at the time. There's a reason why I'm vegan now, y'all, and I don't drink liquor, hiding behind alcohol. Because many of us self-medicate. A year ago, this month, one of my friends, 44 years old, a black man from Jersey, from the hood, inner city of Jersey, literally drank himself to death, you know, because of all the pain that he's been carrying around. And so when I think about education, and I'm going to close it here so we can open up the floor, I think about six areas where I feel like we in this country, in my humble opinion, after 25, 30 years of speaking, organizing, activism work, writing, having conversations with people back and forth, 6 areas I feel like we need to focus on holistically. Can we say holistically? Number 1, spiritually. That ain't got nothing to do with religion. I'm going to say it again. You know, in my lifetime, I've been a Christian, a Muslim. I'm a Christian again. Don't ask. It just kind of happened like that. I've been a hip-hop head for life. That's my religion. You know what I'm saying? Heineken was my religion. Malt liquor was my religion. Why lie? But spirituality, to me, is the consistency of behavior or the struggle to be consistent in all aspects of your life. I'm married, but even if I wasn't married, one thing I'm proud of in the 20 plus years I've been on the road, because I know so many men speakers of different races and cultures who make it a habit of getting with women all over the country. Some of them have probably spoken right at this museum. They're on TV all the time, commenting on Trump and his escapades, and I look at them like, okay. All right, homie. Consistency of behavior. What does spirituality mean? Be honest. Be honest. Be honest. I mean, I got issues. I'm trying to learn how to love myself. My wife and I have an honest spiritual relationship. This is who we are. From the moment we met, we were honest about where we were coming from. One of the first things she said to me, I go to counseling. I'm like, thank God, because I've been doing it too. And where do we meet? In a spiritual space, not even looking for each other. It's called yoga. But spirituality also means how we treat other people, you know? And I think about this all the time. I mean, earlier this week, I got an email that said, the subject heading was, Kevin Powell, you are a N-I-G-G. Y'all know the rest of it, you know? And you know, Brother Lasana said something that hit me a couple of years ago. You know, he said, human beings, we disrespect and disappoint each other like it's no big deal. And as much as I love social media, because I think it's like this great kind of democracy where people's voices matter, it's not a license just to disrespect and hate people all over the place. You know? And I just, I think about my spirit a lot, y'all. And I think about education. I'm like, you know, we never talked about spirituality growing up. And I ain't talking about religion. I'm talking about how do we treat people. We might have heard the so-called golden rule, but did anyone even practice it? What I remember was, meet me at lunchtime so we can fight. Meet me after school so we can fight. Not how do we resolve these things civilly, peacefully, non-violently. So I think about spirituality a lot. Number two, we talk about education of us politically. And I'm not just talking about politics. I'm talking about hashtag read, study, travel for the rest of your lives. Hashtag read, study, travel for the rest of your lives. Hashtag read, study, travel for the rest of your lives. I'm not trying to disrespect anyone, but if you call yourself an American, quote unquote, and you don't have a basic understanding of American history, from the perspective of all the beautiful, diverse people in this room, or at least are interested in doing so, there's nothing wrong with being ignorant, which means not knowing something. Enthusiastic ignorance means you want to stay ignorant. Y'all with me? There's something wrong when I can go to Japan or Wales in the United Kingdom, and they know more about America and American history than more people in this country do. You know what I'm saying? And so when I think about politically, as George Orwell famously said, everything is political. Do we hashtag read, study, travel? Do I know this country? Have I traveled this country? You heard me. I didn't get on a plane until I was 24. I felt embarrassed when I went to college, Rutgers University, which is in my home state of New Jersey. I did not know until I got to Rutgers in central New Jersey that there was a North Jersey, a Central Jersey, and a South Jersey. I'll be honest with y'all, I didn't know there was a Southern California and Northern California. Why would I? I just knew California's mad far. I guess I'm never going there. Because I didn't hashtag read, study, travel. I feel bad a lot of times doing speeches at colleges and universities because I'm like, I'm getting paid money to talk about stuff that people should already know. We got to be intellectually curious, y'all. What do you call it, Brother Lasana? We have to have an imagination. You know what I'm saying? I don't know about y'all, but I'm like fiending for the Netflix special on Bobby Kennedy next week. Just like I was fiending for the HBO special, King in the Wilderness on Dr. King. And yep, I watched the Elvis one too, because I want to know about everything from all perspectives. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, this ain't about being a liberal or a conservative, a Democrat, Republican, whatever you call yourselves. I see the ignorance across the board, because I have been to all 50 states. Big cities, small towns, rural areas, places most people never go because of the lecture circuit. And it hurts my heart, the stuff that people just kind of make up. Like when I was in Washington State in 2016, a week before the election, a cab driver, a white brother, said to me, after I asked him what he thought about the election, that he was not going to vote for Hillary Clinton because she was a Muslim communist who was going to turn the country Muslim and communist. And I was saying to myself, man, that doesn't even go together. Because Muslims believe in God, Allah, and communists supposedly don't believe in anything. But she was a Muslim communist who's going to turn the country Muslim and communist. Now, let me say this. We're laughing, but he went to the same schools that y'all went to. Some of us went to public schools, and some of us paid to be miseducated. They call them private schools. And we're laughing, and do I think Hillary Clinton was the victim of sexism? Absolutely. But do I also think that she's classist, just like Donald Trump? Absolutely. Because she also referred to people as quote-unquote deplorables. And I said to myself, do you not understand what Dr. King was talking about when he said a poor people's campaign? Do you not understand that Bobby Kennedy was also trying to organize working class people, working and respect them as leaders, and those same working class white folks that you call deplorables were sucked up by the Republican Party, even though they're voting against their economic interests. And so when I think about politically, it also means, hey, some of us who call ourselves progressives, revolutionaries, militants, liberals, whatever you call yourselves, I know what y'all are against, but what do you stand for? What are we building here? What is it? Dr. King called it a beloved community. I'm not going to use his term. That's back in the day. I'm going to call it a people's movement. That's what I want to be a part of politically. Now, does it also mean voting? Yeah, but I'm not going to vote for the same people over and over again. The problem is the system of politics in this country, which is predicated on money. I ran for Congress in 08 and 010. If you don't have enough money, people don't pay attention to you. But how are you going to have money if no one wants to support you? You feel what I'm saying? And so it's a two-party system, so it's not really a democracy at all. It's actually an oligarchy. I was at the Democratic National Convention in 2016 where Bernie's people, any Bernie supporters out there? You know, where Bernie's people were basically marginalized, and I'm not fully on board with Bernie Sanders as well. He's got his issues too. Oh yeah, he does. Don't act like he does not. You know what I mean? I mean, his obvious lack of respect for Hillary as a woman, you know, and the lack of diversity around him, which is problematic to me. You know what I'm saying? But I will admit that Bernie was saying some things that made perfect sense. I'm like, there's no way this man's going to ever be president of the United States. This is not going to happen. Feels good. But politics also means that we can't be nostalgic about Barack Obama, because Barack Obama was not progressive. He was a centrist, just like Bill Clinton was a centrist. Barack Obama kicked out more immigrants than any other president in United States history. Just like Bill Clinton passed a crime bill that incarcerated many black and brown people. And so what I'm saying to you all, when I think number two, politically, we need a people's movement. Nothing has changed in this country's history. Read a people's history of the United States without it coming from the people up. But what has happened to us in America in general is the same thing that's happened to black people in America specifically, where we've reduced leadership to faith-based leaders and politicians as if none of y'all can be leaders. There's something insane about that. Lasana's a leader. Davy's a leader. Carolyn's a leader. Jorge's a leader. Delmi's a leader. Anyone who's doing work in the community, providing services, resources, information to the people is a leader. Now, don't get me wrong. I like Barack and Michelle. I realize the symbolic importance of it. I realize how important it is for my mother to have that picture of Michelle and Barack on her wall, just like when I was growing up, black folks would have pictures of Dr. King, Bobby Kennedy, and John F. Kennedy on their walls. And I do understand that we need symbolic victories. That's important for us. But what I'm saying to y'all politically, and I'm sticking here for a second, symbolism is only going to get us but so far. Politics or politically means we got to do some work, y'all. We got to do some work. Everyone keeps talking about Donald Trump. We need to impeach him. Do y'all not know who Mike Pence is? I have been to Indiana. Anyone out there from Indiana? I mean, where do you start? The racism, the sexism, homophobia, the transphobia. You know what I mean? And Mike Pence is polished and sophisticated. And then, you know, when I say politically, I was a political science major in college. Not that that means anything, but we actually know that it is very difficult to impeach a president of the United States. And if we're actually paying attention, the Republicans are basically saying, hey, Democrats, y'all can have the House of Representatives. Where it really matters is the Senate. We're going to keep that sucker on lock. And all this other stuff that's going on, y'all, smoke screens. Smoke screens. Stormy Daniels and Mike Cohen and all this stuff that's going on. Does it mean that Donald Trump is not a racist, sexist, pervert? Yes, he is. Very clear. But politically, you know, this is kind of playing games with us. And we need to be very, very aware of this stuff. I really recommend that all of us in this room not only read George Orwell's 1984 again, if we haven't already, but also another book called Animal Farm. If you really understand how politics operates. We can't stop at politics, though. Number 3, culturally, who are we? Who are we? I don't know about y'all, but I don't want to be a part of a culture where it's rooted in violence, gun violence, hatred of people of color, hatred of women, hatred of queer people, disrespect, disregard for disabled people, disrespect for people's faith or no faith at all. They have that right. I don't want to be a part of a culture of violence and hatred and division. Do y'all want to be a part of a culture like that? I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of what Brother Kumi's shirt says. I love being black. I love being human. I love all people. What's wrong with that kind of culture? Love. Is there anything wrong with the word love? As a black person, that means that I love who I am. That means not only do I love Dr. King, but I love Malcolm X, I love Faneuil Heyman, I love Ella Baker, I love my mama, I love cornbread, I love Solely Vegan. Well, I'm going there after this. Y'all can come with me. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Sister Dyson, right? The owner. But y'all feel what I'm saying? And so whoever you are, do you know who you are and do you love yourself culturally, right? You know, that's what I'm talking about. When I walked through that hip-hop exhibit, I felt myself. Because this is who I am. I was a b-boy, a dancer growing up. I was a graffiti writer growing up. You know what I'm saying? It's a part of me, right? I love Stevie Wonder. I love Aretha Franklin. I love Sly and the Family Stone. But I love the Beatles, and I love Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. I love Elton John. I love Laura Nyro and Carole King. I love culture that says something, right? You know, I could love the Black Panther film, but I also love the movie Lady Bird based in Sacramento, California. And I love The Shape of Water, right? You feel what I'm saying? Culture. And I feel like our culture has become riddled with that which is decadent. Lasana was playing for me before we came here, J. Cole's new album. It's a dope album. What did J. Cole do? What is he doing brilliantly? He's taking the music of today, trap music. But if you listen to the lyrics that he's spitting over the trap beats, he's actually questioning and criticizing the culture that we're participating in, which is a culture of disrespect, a culture of denigration, a culture of ignorance or enthusiastic ignorance. Now, some of y'all could say, that's Cardi B too, Cass, so what you saying? I'm like, well, I still like Cardi. But anyway, we also could be contradictory at times, right? But my hope is, culturally, we also give Cardi the space to evolve. Just like women, when I was at my worst as a man, gave me the space to evolve and actually said, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to read. Who are we culturally? Number 4, financially, we're talking about education. I mean, this has been my big problem my entire life. I'm not afraid to admit it. Poor people like myself who come from poverty, there's no financial literacy programs when I was growing up. My mama just said, save your money. Well, how do you do that? Because if you're poor and your self-esteem is shot, guess what you're going to do with the money you get? Back to the piece that y'all going to be talking about, I hope. You're going to spend your money fast. I thank God every day that I found my wife and met my wife because she is mad frugal. I'm not going to say cheap. She's mad frugal. She got me thinking like, damn, I never thought about it like that. But she's frugal. Can y'all say frugal? In other words, the next time Black Friday comes along, you'll be like, know what? I'm good. I don't need that. Christmas ain't had nothing to do with Jesus. Kwanzaa ain't got nothing to do with capitalism. And I'm just going to save my money. What do I need another flat screen for? What do I need 50 pairs of Timberlands for? The latest this or later that? I mean, financially, I went through a situation with a piece of property in Brooklyn that I had to let go of, a condo. I didn't realize until I got myself into this situation that certain communities are specifically targeted. And you see the headlines today that Wells Fargo is being sued for the abuse of home loans. because they're preying on the financial illiteracy. Am I right, my sister? The financial illiteracy of our communities. And this is not just black and brown people. This is all of us in this country. But if your self-esteem, if you're not there spiritually, if you're not there politically, if you're not there culturally, then they will get you financially. Because all of your self-esteem is tied into material things. I don't want to go back to the poverty that I used to have. And God knows these last few months have been a struggle. But I'm saying to myself, education means, man, you got to live a simple life. You got to live a minimalist life. Buy what you need, not what you want. And be more mindful of getting yourself into financial situations that will bring on great stress and chaos. How many of y'all know what I'm talking about? Because how can we take care or help other people if we are struggling? And boy, have I had to think about that a lot this year. I'm just being honest with y'all. And I know these things. Financially. The last two, we're talking about 6 areas where we need to think about education and empowerment in a different way. Number 1 was spiritually. Number 2 is politically. Number 3 is culturally. Number 4 is financially. The last 2, we definitely don't like to deal with, at least not a lot of us. Number 5 is physical health. Physical health. You heard me say I'm a vegan. Why am I a vegan? Because my whole family, diabetes, high blood pressure. I'm watching my mother, swollen hands, swollen feet, severe arthritis. I took her to my holistic doctor. My doctor laid out a thorough plan for healing. My doctor says all the time that in America, most doctors are trained to control, not to heal. The moment we left the doctor's office, my mother, who's a good Christian, goes to church all the time, quotes Jesus back and forth. She said, F him. I don't care what that MF said. You know what I'm saying, Cousin Angela. And I just, and I try to get slick. I took my mama to a vegan restaurant in Brooklyn called the V-Spot. I didn't even tell her there was no meat. And she said, this is the nastiest stuff I've ever had in my life. Don't ever bring me back here again. And then I go shopping with my mother. When I'm in town, I take my mother grocery shopping every week. Here I am trying to read the instructions on the, no. My mother said something very profound to me. She said, you're trying to take away my happiness. But let's think about it for a second. My mother has a 8th grade education. Her entire life, she has dealt with racism and sexism and classism. My mother has a few joys in her life. It's her recliner chair in the living room. It's watching Ellen and Steve Harvey. And it's food. And I had to take a step back. And I had to say to myself, Kev, you're the hippie in the family. You're the yogi, hiking, vegan dude. But you need to not try to impose on your mama, But let me say this to y'all, since y'all not my mama. Everybody type in this room is beautiful. Everyone in this room is beautiful and handsome, no matter who you are. That didn't hurt, right? Everyone in this room is beautiful and handsome, no matter who you are. But, okay, let me take the but out. However, no. Everyone in this room is beautiful or handsome. And because I love y'all. Okay. I just want to see us healthier. I don't even care if people eat meat. I'm not one of those militant, angry vegan people. I remember when I was a meat eater and I had friends who were vegan, and they would say crazy stuff to me like, give me more meat because you just said that. You know what I'm saying? But what I am saying is we got one vessel. This synagogue, this masjid, this mosque, this temple, this church that we got And we need to think about what we put into it. You know? If you're able-bodied, there's nothing wrong with walking. I wish I lived in an area that had something like Lake Merritt. I would just walk around Lake Merritt. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to run. You don't have to do that. Or bicycle or something. It hurts me when I see people that I've come of age with who are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s struggling physically. You know what I mean? It hurts me when I have friends who are dying, several in the last couple of months, of preventable stuff. I feel that if y'all really pay attention to the stuff we're bombarded with the ads, we're encouraged to put stuff in our bodies that are not good for us, but they're banking on we're not together spiritually, we're not together politically, we're not together culturally, we're not together financially, and then you get to physical health. Here you go. Y'all with me? Yes. Which explains why my mother said, you're trying to take away my happiness. You know, because unfortunately, and I love my mother, and I love that she believes in God and all that, but she doesn't go to a spiritual institution that's about empowering people. It's about taking their money. Let's call it what it is. You know what I mean? And politics for her has been reduced to voting, whether you vote or not. That's not just politics by itself. And culturally, it's just a few gospel songs at this point, you know? And then financially, I mean, she still describes herself as poor. And words have power. Words have power. So why would you care about your body at that point? Y'all with me? And so when I think about the education of us, we got to think about this. And it's never too late. I have a friend who's almost 60 years old back in New York who had severe diabetes. He made a conscious decision to start taking care of himself, exercising. He's reversed it. He's actually run a few marathons, y'all. I met him when I was training for New York City Marathon. No judgment, right? No judgment. I'm saying this with love because I want to see us healthy and whole. You know, watch a movie by Byron Hurt called Soul Food. It was made specifically for black folks, but it's really about all of us. Because I've learned as I've gone to the homes of other people, be it my Latino sisters and brothers or my Asian sisters and brothers, you know, my Italian American sisters and brothers, all of us seem to eat a lot of food that is greasy and oily and salt-based and sugar-based. This stuff, read a book called Sugar Blues. Sugar is a drug. Why do I know this? Because I was addicted to it growing up, and I was so addicted to it that I would see spots before my eyes, you know, and my teeth fell out in the back of my mouth from eating all that sugar. And so, you know, I'd be remiss to talk about education and not talk about physical health. When I met Brother Hadari's mother, I said, man, you look amazing. How old is she, brothers? 79. She's 4 years older than my mother. She moves around in a way that I wish my mother moved around. You feel what I'm saying? Because clearly your mother values the vessel that is her. And I love my mother. I love us in this room. But we got to take care of ourselves, y'all. Which ties to number 6, our mental health. Wow. I don't even know where to start. I get a lot of emails and private messages on social media from people who are suicidal, men who say I've been violent towards women who say they have had some issues, you know, themselves around emotional health. I look at how parents talk to their children. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just saying to y'all, I'm not perfect. Boy, do I make a lot of mistakes. Do I? But I think mental health has to start with ownership of your issues, ownership of your stuff. Are y'all with me? You know, I just think about that a lot more than ever. When I watched the Dr. King documentary on HBO and the Elvis documentary on HBO, whether you love Dr. King or Elvis or don't, that's besides the point. Pay attention to the mental health of both of these men during their journey. The Dr. King documentary is striking because it's the first time I ever heard anyone talk publicly about Dr. King's mental health and how it deteriorated because he was a leader of a movement for 13 years. Are y'all with me? And unfortunately, you know, and I'm also a journalist. I was just at a journalist convention last weekend. Many of us don't talk about the stress levels as journalists, as educators, as people in the media, as filmmakers, as artists. Y'all know what I'm saying? And there's a reason why I meditate every day. There's a reason why I practice yoga. There's a reason why I believe in therapy. There's a reason why I have friends like Lasana that I can talk with about anything, no judgment, because I'm like, you got to have some spaces where you can just let this stuff go. Y'all with me out there? You know what I mean? And I'm, you know, and we who call ourselves heterosexual or cisgendered men, I mean, a lot of us only talk about sex, sports, and women. That's it. There's something very unhealthy about that, you know? It's very clear that Donald Trump is not healthy, you know? And you can see the difference between Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Barack Obama is in a healthy, loving relationship with someone who is his equal. Meanwhile, you got a man over here who's participating in the worst possible definitions, emotionally and spiritually, of manhood. Huge difference. Am I right, y'all? And so I'm saying to y'all, you know, we got to think about our emotional health. Our emotional health. When I look at all the mass shootings that happen around this country, I think about emotional health. That doesn't mean everyone is mentally ill. That's not to blame the mentally ill community for every violent act. But what I'm saying is, what is leading to these kinds of behavior, violence in any form, you know? I don't believe in terms like anger management anymore. Why would I want to manage the anger? I want to get to the root causes of the anger. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I was very angry growing up. Why was I angry? Because we were poor, because my mother was hurt and she took out things on me, because my father abandoned us. Y'all with me out there? And because in school, all they said was, oh, your son has behavioral problems, and so they would put you in a corner somewhere, or they'll put you in special education, but they never get to the root causes. Why is this child so angry? Well, the child is angry because he, she, they're wounded. They're wounded. And so, spiritually, politically, culturally, financially, physical health, mental health, in my opinion, one reason why the right wing, the Republicans, the conservatives, whatever you want to call them, they know what they stand for. They know what they believe in. They're very clear about that. They're entrenched. I started college during the Reagan-Bush years. They're saying the same things they did 30 years ago. But my question for the folks who believe in the human family, what do we believe in? What are we for? What are we going to do? Does that make sense, y'all? You know, and why is it wrong for us to have words like healing and spirituality as a part of our conversation? Why should the right own the conversation around spirituality when that spirituality clearly doesn't include people like me? And so, the last thing I'll say, any of y'all ever been in love? Anyone ever been in love? Well, most important love you can have is love yourself, right? Because how you gonna love anyone else? You don't love yourself. If you don't know yourself, how can you love yourself? That's what it gets down to. If you love yourself, then you take care of yourself in a very different kind of way. Even if you fall down, because I fall down all the time. You know, I went through a very stressful period. My wife's show, I'm talking about her off-Broadway show, we had to push back for several months. I ain't gonna lie, I was binge eating, I was stressed, I was having migraines, I was getting headaches, I was having heart palpitations, all kinds of stuff. This the last 3 or 4 months. Stress, anxiety, etc. And at some point, I said, you know what? I got to pull back and I got to take care of me. You know what I mean? I got to make sure I take care of myself, because otherwise, I'm going to be like some of my friends that I've seen out there who gave everything they had to the community, to this world, you know, and they died. Dr. King, go back and watch it. I had mountaintop speech. I had a dream speech, the mountaintop speeches last week. Look how tired and sick he was. He was only 39 years old. He said his heart was that of a 60-year-old, not a healthy 60-year-old. Not a healthy 60-year-old. You know what I'm saying? And so when I think about the education of us, it's like, are we willing to not only create a plan for ourselves, are we willing to empower ourselves, but also share what we have with our communities? Does that make sense, y'all? Yes. You know what I mean? I'm tired of symposiums, reports, studies. I'm like, well, what is it we're going to do? What are we willing to do? What are we willing to create? You know, what do we want to leave behind? You know, where is Kamari at? Where's she at? She's sleeping, of course. But this beautiful, how old is your daughter? 8 years old. We had the most amazing conversation. She's full of life. Remember when you were a child, you were full of life? You know, possibilities. You didn't think about these crazy things we have to do as adults. You know, and what I want to see happen to her, which often happens to every generation, those dreams get snatched away. Because the people ahead of her, you know, when you look at the children, the young people at Parkland High School in Florida, you know, or the young people around the country, let me know black girls who spoke at the march in D.C., these are children. But why don't we more of us speak? You know what I mean? And we got to stop putting in all the gave his life, knowing it was over when he got to Memphis and gave that mountaintop speech. This is it. This is all I got. You know what I'm saying? Y'all in the Bay Area, you know, be it Huey Newton or Harvey Milk, does it matter? They just gave their lives because they were fighting for something. And the worst disrespect we can give to these people who come before us is to just sit here and take up space and not do anything. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be honest with y'all. I'm tired. I wanted to actually cancel this tour, to postpone this tour to September, but I said to myself, you know what, Kev? I need to get out there. And there were times, y'all, the last few weeks where I just was depressed. Why was I depressed? Because my wife's show was about violence against women and girls. And what I found out as a producer for the last 2 years, a lot of people talk a big game, but most people don't want to support causes that have to do with violence against women and girls. You know what I'm saying? As a man. You know what I mean? And I said, this is crazy. You know? They'll respond to some celebrity saying, hey, give us some money, but if you're regular, everyday people are like, well, that's nice. I can't tell you how many men said to me, who are friends of mine, who support me twice when I went to Congress, paid thousands of dollars. Kevin, this is not my message. This has nothing to do with me. This is what we deal with. You know what I mean? And look at the children in this room. Look at the parents in this room. This is the world that we want them to come into. You know what I mean? This is the world we want them to come into. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. And so we've got to make an effort. We've got to make an effort to find compassion and empathy in our hearts for each other. We got to know who we are, no matter who we are, and be proud of that. We've got to make an effort to cross boundaries and be willing to reach out to other people. You know, when Brother Jorge said he was just coming to Peru, you know, I got excited. I said, man, that's where Tupac got his name from, man. I can't wait to get to Peru. And he said, right, from Fiji. I was like, man, everyone I know says go to Fiji, man. You'll be so happy. You know what I mean? So make an effort. It's an effort to cross boundaries, man. That's what it's about, you know? That's what it's about. And so I just want to thank y'all, and let's open up the floor. Excuse me for getting emotional, but it's been a long 4 months of 2018, and y'all are lucky y'all not in New York, because the weather sucks too.
Whew.
Can we do some dialogue?
Thank you so much. Give it up for Kevin Powell and the Education of Us tour and all of your participation.
Wait, can we do questions? Can we do questions? Dialogue with people?
I think we may have room for about 2 or 3 questions, just given that right after this, right outside, we have created the space for folks to get signed copies of Kevin's book if they were so interested. We do have to wrap everything all up by 10 o'clock. So if we had 1 or 2 questions in the house, I'd gladly just
or 10 or 20. I'm just kidding.
ring. Has to be 2 or 3. Yes.
Where am I? I'm not going anywhere. Can I just stay here? Please.
Give it up for Kevin Powell, you guys.
I really am not going anywhere. Where am I going? I flew 3,000 miles. Hello. Huh? Solely Vegan's open till 11:30. We got time. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
It really inspired me about how you shared about how things really have not changed and how people's stories are really important. One of my favorite movies of all time is It's a Wonderful Life. And do we all remember Potter's Field?
Yes.
And I personally fell into that type of a situation. I come from a banking background in California. When I finally bought my first home, the only way that I could afford it was going into an interest-only loan. And one of the things that I learned from that experience was I did research, and in California, 90 out of every 100 homes that are purchased with a loan.
Wow.
So only 10 out of every 100 homes purchased are purchased with cash, which means that the real estate market is not set by us, the people, it's set by big business and banks. So I just wanted to share with you, thank you for sharing how it's really important for us to tell our stories and to see how it repeats itself, and that's why It's a Wonderful Life and Potter's Field really resonates with me, because it's like we live in Potter's Field today. So thank you.
You know what's interesting about It's a Wonderful Life, which is also my favorite movie ever, it was not popular when it came out. In fact, it didn't become popular until it came on TV in the late 70s. And that's a very important film criticizing constructively this society that we live in. People think it's a Christmas special. It's so much more than that. Now, Brother Investor, can I say one thing? And I mean this with all due respect now. I would like to stay as long as people want to ask questions or make comments. The books are cool, but this is more important to me. Is that all right? Okay. I would prefer to do this. And y'all could just buy the books online or buy them at the store later. That's cool. I prefer y'all.
Hey, I just wanted to thank you for the messages that you gave tonight. And
Thank you.
I didn't really know exactly if this was right for my two little sons here.
How old are they?
How old are you?
Good. 7. 10.
10. Y'all are geniuses.
But I think that what you had to say had an impression upon them, even though they were like laying down and everything else. My son here definitely heard you say, like when you asked, have you ever been in love? He was like, Daddy, say you've been in love. So, but a few things stuck with me, a bunch of things. But towards the end, you talked about the 6
steps.
Yeah. Are there ways for us to figure out how to get a sense of what the platforms are for each one of those steps, so we could figure out where we could give back to each one of those steps? Like, for instance, I'm in finance, and I would love to figure out to go beyond financial literacy, right, into financial inclusion.
Right here, you got some folks who work in the financial world. Y'all should connect.
So, it's one of those things where, I really believe that, there's a dynamic where we definitely have to be literate, but we have to figure out how to include. And, and while, again, we buy, on loan, credit is what makes the world goes around, and we have to figure out how to give that back to our people, but also make sure that they are very literate so that they're not taken advantage of. And even the other 5 steps as well. I mean, there's dynamics where I think that we're in a place where we can figure out how to use social media or something to put pillars on each one of those.
I agree.
Right, we could each figure out how to participate in it a bit more.
I'm having a deja vu moment right now because I feel like I've heard you say this before. This is crazy. I think that what you do you visit schools at all? Where do you live? What part of the Bay do you live in?
In San Francisco.
Okay. San Francisco, Oakland, East Bay, anywhere. I think anyone, how many of y'all here, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, how many of y'all went to college, just by show of hands? Okay. I'm going to say this. When I was growing up, I barely saw any college-educated folks come to my schools, it's particularly inner-city schools. And so that's one thing that's not stopping us, is just show up. I make it a point in New York City. I go to a school every month somewhere in New York City, especially in Brooklyn, since I live in Brooklyn. And so I would recommend that. And I think it's important, too, especially because you're a father. A lot of us never get to see fathers. I didn't see fathers growing up hardly at all. And you'd be amazed how your story will resonate, just to share and be honest with folks. And then you have people here who do the work around financial empowerment in our communities. I think y'all should connect. I'm sure they could use your skill sets. Do y'all know each other as well? You feel what I'm saying? Which is the whole point of this room, the folks that are still here. Can we connect with each other locally? Because a lot of times, what I've seen traveling around the country, a speaker will come from outside and folks will say things, but then they never connect with each other locally. All movements are local. All movements are local. And I'm just trying to say, hey, let's connect with each other. I think it's important what you said. I want to give back and just offer it. People be willing to take it, I'd never had any kind of financial literacy, anything growing up. And that's why when I got money, I spent it over and over again. I started college. I had a free ride to college. When college was over for me, I was thousands of dollars in debt because I didn't know how to use credit cards and because I took out student loans that I actually didn't need, And I wish someone would have said to me, Kev, you should keep I didn't know what a budget was. I had no idea how to even do a budget. And so your skill set is invaluable, and I think just offer it to folks, and people will respond to it. As far as the 6 platforms, my suggestion is, ask ourselves, spiritually, politically, culturally, financially, physical health, mental health, what do I do in each of these areas for my own self-empowerment? What areas do I need improvement in? I'll be the first one to say financially is the one I want to work on more than anything else, you know what I'm saying? And in the ones that I'm actually good at, do I share that with other people who need this? That's what I would say I would throw back at you all. I'm throwing it out there because it's not my thing. I gave you my views on it, but I think that you all Everyone in this room is a genius in some way. Can you flesh out these ideas? It's like when we did, Lasana, myself, and some other black men did something called the Black Male Handbook. The Black Male Handbook basically has sections on spirituality, politics, etc. I never said to Lasana, you got to write what I want on spirituality. I said, give us your view on spirituality. And he wrote a brilliant piece on this is what spirituality means to me. And he wove it through his entire life journey up until that point. Do you see what I'm saying? So you all have wisdom. Everyone has wisdom, but we got to be willing to tap into it and say, okay, this is what I bring to the table, and this is what I can share with folks. My only thing is, we should not be exploiting people. Yes. And I think about capitalism, so much of it is rooted in exploiting people. And that's what I can't support. I live in Brooklyn, which just like the Bay Area, has rents that are out of control. There's a level of greed that is unacceptable. You know what I mean? Particularly when I see the amount of homeless people in San Francisco, Oakland, and Berkeley, just like I see in Brooklyn. You know what I mean? Today I bought a woman lunch named Sonia. She's a young woman. I've seen younger and younger people become homeless in this society. And so how much do we need to the detriment of other people? And I don't buy the argument that, people just need to pull up themselves up by their bootstraps. What if you don't have any boots? What if you don't have any means whatsoever? And so that's where the humanity comes in, the compassion comes in, where it can't just be about, your wealth at the expense of other people. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking in general now. That's what bothers me. This unfiltered greed, you know what I mean? And I just think how many of y'all have flown over the country? Have you seen all that space out there? I'm like, why are there so many homeless people in the Bay Area and in New York when there's all this, but no one cares about actually helping people? Because if you deal with the homeless population, you might have to deal with your spirit and politics and culture and have a constructive financial conversation, and you got to deal with physical health and mental health. And people don't want to deal, back to the 6 points. How do you do it? Well, there's communities that could use this help, you know what I mean, in these 6 areas, and are we willing to help people? That's the way I look at it, so. Who else? Yes, please. Yeah, please. Do you have a mic?
Oh, sorry.
Oh. Okay. Oh, sorry, you got the mic.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I guess I'm seeking some is this me?
No, it's me. I'm sorry.
Okay. Seeking advice and from you and seeking some guidance.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm an educator in East Oakland, and pardon me if I stutter, because I've been grappling with this all year long. I really respect the way that you are preaching the revolution of love, and that is something that I've been struggling with and pushing myself to get better at when working amongst educators many who happen to be white, who speak about our young black and brown students in ways that are very painful for me as an educator. Yeah. And some of these educators, I cannot find the love for them.
I understand.
One educator this year, I have found love for her. And I'm grappling with where is the appropriate place or line to push her in her 6 different ways of awareness. And I get stuck in this tension of Malcolm X by any means necessary to J. Cole of the only real revolution starts right in front of you, inside of you. And so I'm stuck between just, what's the verb? Aggressively asking her questions and holding the mirror aggressively in front of her face. Yeah. Or just leaving it alone and modeling and just working on myself and never saying anything to her. But at what I'm sorry, I don't have an articulate question, but I guess it's very articulate. At the end of the day, I think I'm asking you for some advice on what actions I should or shouldn't take, or what questions you might pose for me to think about before I engage in dialogue with her, to either push her or also to preserve myself.
What was so deep about what you said, and thank you for it was very articulate, because what I'm hearing is everything from people of color struggling with the racism of white sisters and brothers, women struggling with the sexism of men, queer brothers and sisters, queer human beings struggling with the heterosexism of so-called straight people, where the people who are the victims of the privilege, the oppression, take on the burden of having to educate the people who are privileged. You feel what I'm saying? And so not only are we suffering from the oppression, but now we have the job of having to be like the mammy figure for these folks as well, which is insanity. Would y'all agree? That's like insanity. And so, yes, ma'am. Say it, please. It is crazy. Can I give you the mic? And can you repeat everything you said word for word? No. Okay. Thank you.
You know, you go through the whole programming and reprogramming of yourself, and you go in your spirituality, and you go in your retreats, and you go in your questioning of yourself, and you continue to expand your networks, and you continue to expand the people that you know and how you know them, and you continue to self-reflect, and then you get back into that conversation with your beloveds who just happen to be white, and you have to have the conversation again. I've been in Swan's Market 5 times. I've had this conversation 5 times in Swan's Market. Everyone's life does matter, but that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that there's a socio-political conversation going on. And I'm so tired of having the 60-second conversation. Like, I dread the 60-second conversation. I don't want to have the 60-second conversation, but I will. And I'll have the 63rd and the 64th and the 65th, and I'll keep doing it until I get better at the conversation ultimately. But it's exhausting. It's exhausting to, one, hold the space of articulation for this conversation one more time. It's exhausting to have to model the kind of appropriate behavior of the conversation so the other person can hear the conversation. It's exhausting to have to fight the person who you love, who really is like completely blinded by the entire kernel of the conversation, and still love them through the conversation, and then still, again, once more, model ethical behavior in having that conversation with this person who can't ever understand the conversation. And I am tired of it, but ultimately have to find the continued strength to continue having the conversation. And
where do you find that strength? That's your question, basically, isn't it?
The strength, and I've been having this internal dialogue of trust versus faith, right? Like, faith is this sort of thing that is going around in your psyche, and trust is this thing that your body has to do. Like, it has to accept that love will conquer and that truth will tell. That's like the ultimate conversation in our family, is truth tells. And if you continue to hold your integrity, your personal value and your personal integrity, that over time that will have an effect, and you have to trust that. And that's where I get my strength. And I get the strength that my dad worked so many jobs, and his dad did what his dad did, and my grandma did what she did, and all those people before me who had no conversations because nobody ever asked them anything, and just continued to pass or continued to survive or continued to thrive, who allowed me the opportunity to have these conversations.
I want to play Angel's Advocate for a second. I ain't no devil. What do you say to people? This is for anyone. In America, some folks will say, well, white folks will never change. Some folks will say, well, men will never change. Some folks will say cisgender to straight folks will never change. Some folks will say rich folks will never change. How do you respond to that?
I change.
How?
I mean, everyone can, if I can change, they can change.
How?
Through courage, continual courage to say, this is a vulnerable space. I feel vulnerable in it. I have to find power in my truth. I have to honor my ancestors. I have to, I agree with the idea that this Messiah complex we're giving our children, like, oh, the children will save it. No, we're supposed to be helping them save it. Like, that's not their responsibility. So I have a responsibility to the children. although I am not a physical mother. So all those things motivate me into that space. And I go to my practice, whatever that is. And even that conversation amongst people of color is really hard too, because we're culturally appropriating other people's cultures, and we get into this whole tailspin around what it is to like approach a mat or be a Buddhist or go to yoga retreats. And there's like a whole nother tailspin that goes into that. I'm leaving my other roots. I'm cultural appropriating somebody else's culture. But we have to find peace where it is. And you know, my people are Puerto Rican, so we're triracial. We come from the slaves that came over, from those indigenous peoples that survived, and the Spaniards that conquered. And so we really have like this cosmic mentality that we have to propagate, which is we're everyone. And there's no separation amongst those people. And in my own blood, there's struggle. In my own blood, there's struggle with the ancestors who oppressed my other ancestors and slaughtered them and continue to do so today. Thank you for the paper towels. So,
Trump throwing the paper towels at Puerto Ricans.
And so,
that was crazy.
I have all of that in me, and that is what motivates me, and that's what gives me the courage. There's too much fertility in all of that compost to waste it. And so I take the next steps. And I go into debt to get my education because viva la raza, and we have master's degrees too, and I take those responsibilities on regardless of the other institutional knowledge of I've been indebted, the degree is devalued. Like, you know, you're in the middle of all the conversations and you're driving your car through the fog on the bridge and you're going anyway, you know? You're just like, I'm gonna get to where I'm going. But where I'm going isn't always clear. It's just hope, going towards hope.
Wow. As we pass the mic up there, so thank you for sharing all of that. It's hard. To your question, it's hard because you find yourself having to not just do your job, but basically be a teacher to grown folks over and over again. You know, and I've heard a lot of people of different backgrounds say, I'm just tired of doing that. But what I think about are things like Sojourner Truth, challenging folks with I Ain't a Woman, you know, when folks, white sisters try to exclude black women from the questions around women's rights in the country in the 1800s. I think about Frederick Douglass challenging people with his 4th of July speech. You know, I think of Bobby Kennedy having the courage to go to South Africa in 1966 and speak about white supremacy, you know, in South Africa, in the teeth of apartheid. And I do feel like we have to, if we're woke, we really can't turn off being woke, if that makes sense. You know, during the Civil Rights era, they called it a river of no return. Once you became aware of stuff, you had to keep going, you had to keep flowing. But I do agree that we have to figure out ways to take care of ourselves in the midst of it, because I definitely have had experiences like that, you know, be it with white folks or men, as someone who talks about sexism a lot, who just, you know, don't want to hear it at all, or don't get it and are completely clueless. And as we said earlier, enthusiastically ignorant. And that's where you got to figure out, okay, let me just take a moment back and make sure I take care of myself. It's hard, but I think, especially in education, this word, and you're in schools, I don't think anyone should be working with any children, no matter what their racial, cultural background, if they don't have a love for all children. You know, I've spoken at schools that were majority Black, Latino, schools that were majority Asian. I mean, when I went to Japan, Japanese students, they get the same love as a white kid or a Black kid or a Latino kid would get in America. If I'm at schools with all white children, they're going to get the same love from me, because I don't want to do to them which would happen to me, you know, to not respect them and who they are. Do you feel what I'm saying? Yes.
Help me actually think about what I'm actually really trying to say.
Okay.
And it's, as an educator, if you, in your heart, know that a fellow educator doesn't love all children,
yes,
is it your role to love them and cultivate them and model for them to love all children, or to push them out?
I would challenge them. Why are you here? Do you actually love children? I would be very direct about it. Do you actually love these children? Is this a job with benefits for you? You know what I mean? And I've said that because I come from folks who normalize disrespect of children, Thank you, Brother Dari. And violence in verbal ways and other ways. I have a low tolerance for people who disrespect young people, no matter what the young person's culture or race. And I say it to them. I mean, I've been in settings like this at schools where I've watched teachers and principals actually yell and denigrate children in front of me. I was like, no, that's not acceptable. I'm not going for that. You know what I mean? And so I think that you have to challenge folks in a loving way, whatever that means for you. But why are you here? Is this just a 2 or 3 year thing for you? Is this just a passing thing for you? Or are you committed to education as an empowerment tool for all young people? I would ask straight up, Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so my question, I recently saw the question bridge that they had here. And so my question is, how have you created those conversations, particularly for men of color, as you've traveled throughout the United States? So how have you cultivated those conversations for men of color around a lot of the 6 pillars that you already communicated today? Well,
it's a great question. That's, for us, I mean, I think since the time I was 18, which was a long time ago, back in the 1800s, I've thought about, once I became woke, how do we empower young men of color? And I grew up with African Americans and Puerto Ricans and Dominicans in Jersey City, so I especially thought about Black and Latino males. And the reality is there was not a lot of stuff out there for us. I got Haki Madabuti's book, Jawanza Kunjufu. Malcolm X's autobiography completely changed my life. And how do you do it? You share what you learn, And so for me, at a certain point, I was like, okay, it's not enough for me just to quote Malcolm and, Jawanza and Haki Madhubuti or Baldwin or Richard Wright. Let me start to create the kind of text that I would like to see that I wish existed. And one of them, as I mentioned earlier, is called the Black Male Handbook, a blueprint for life. And we actually put those 6 tenets in the book. And how did the Black Male Handbook came about? We actually did a tour like this, which was called the State of Black Men Tour. I think we did about 10 to 12 cities back in 2005, 2006. And then we did a national conference in New York City, in Brooklyn, New York. And out of that, I was like, man, we got to do a book. Because brothers kept asking us questions like, what do I do spiritually? What do I do if I'm stopped by the police? Brothers were even asking us hygiene questions, which is why there's a hygiene section in the back of the book. What do I need to do to prepare for a job? Stuff like that. And so I believe, like Toni Morrison said, we should all create what we want to see out there. And that's what we did. The book came out 10 years ago, and it's blown my mind how the book has popped up in so many different places. People have just handed me, like, I got the Black Male Handbook. People in prison have written me about it, people on college campuses. And I'm saying that you can do the same thing, because all I'm saying is that let's build on it. And one of the things we intentionally did, too, at the back of the Black Male Handbook, here's a list of music, books, films, documentary films that Black men and men of color could read for self-empowerment, you know what I mean? So I think, again, if we use the word leader, and I'm not talking about myself, but any of us in this room, a leader should create resources, services, information that gets shared with people. The most important thing leaders can do is to create other leaders. You know what I mean? Because if it becomes, like you said, this Messiah thing, Kevin Powell. No, it ain't about Kevin Powell, it's about us. That's why it's called the education of us, not me, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that there's a lot of work out there. Brother Lasana's doing great work at Skyline College. Everywhere he's gone. He's one of the examples I cite. When he was at Arizona State, he set up an initiative for Black and Latino males who were in high school to get them. He created a bridge for them to come to Arizona State and to graduate. That's a model. There's 2 friends of mine. Oh, yeah. There's a friend of mine, 2 friends of mine in New York, Jason Warwin and Kari Lazar-White. They both went to Brown University, one of the best schools in the world, not just America. And when they got out of Brown, they started something called the Brotherhood, which evolved into Brotherhood Sister Soul. That organization is now 25 years old. Next year, 90% of their kids, 100% of their kids are Black and Latino, Black and Brown. 95% of them come from single-parent households. 95% go to college. You see what I'm saying? And so, again, we create what we want to see. If you see a need, then you go create that. Is there some sort of rites of passage program here? Are there fatherhood programs here? What is needed in the Bay Area? And you got to be willing to fill that void. Does that make sense, you all? You wanted to say something. Can I? You have the mic, or do you need the mic? She's had her hand up for a while. Can I just pass it to her?
You can, but that would have to be our last question, just given the time. We have to be
Kevin,
totally wrapped by time.
I just want to say I see someone powerful. I see someone full of love. I see someone full of light. I see someone compassionate. I see a leader. I see someone who truly cares and who sees themselves in us. I see someone that no matter how tired you say you are, you're going to keep on going because that is who you are. You bring love. You bring the best out of us. And I want you to know that whenever you feel that you're tired, you're not alone. We are all with you. I see you. Thank you so, so, so much for really empowering and leaving this imprint in our hearts tonight, because I feel that everybody here in this room who saw you, who heard you, who really looked at your eyes and felt the pain that you felt and felt that love that you feel will make this world better. So just by the fact that you took the time to really travel and really spend it here with us and really just motivate us to become a better person, we are all you and you are all in us. I see you. And I want you to know that that is the best legacy that a person can leave behind. Thank you so much for being such an amazing inspiration. Thank you.
I just wanted to also say, I'm listening to the sister in the back. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm also an educator.
Thank you, Ambassador.
I work in Oakland Unified School District.
Thank you for doing what you do.
I currently mentor about 60 Black girls.
Wow.
In middle school. I try.
You're doing it.
And I just wanted to talk about, like you talked about classism and about this educational system here in California, where it is very classist. You will not earn a living wage or a respectable wage unless you have these things. Take this test or take these 3 tests. And all of those things cost money. And I find it so ironic that educators or administrators are willing to have you do the work, but not give you the wage of who you're replacing or who you're representing. And how easy it is for them to do that and not have any, guilt about it. Or not, or just to say, well, it's the system, you get this and you get this and you get this, then we'll give you a living wage. And here in the Bay Area, where someone can go to work every day and be told your salary is $2,800 is really pathetic in this area, in the Bay Area. In the Bay Area, and that's a lot of people in the Bay Area that are dealing with our children, teaching our children, educating our children, caring for our children all day. And so when we talk about classism, I don't know about any other state. I can just say here in California, it's holding a lot of, especially Black women, from doing the work they already know how to do, which is caring for our children and educating them how they know they should be educated, having the compassion for children of color, and holding children of color to a standard.
Yes.
And not being afraid of that standard. Like, well, no, you can't turn in an essay with 3 sentences. I'm sorry, it has to be more. Like, I don't know what you're doing in this other class, but that just can't be here because we have to be better, So, but we're the ones, I can't speak for everyone, all educators, but I'm just saying that this is also happening in education. We just had the whole thing in, I believe, Tennessee, where they weren't even being paid $20,000, $30,000 a year, and they're educating our children. They're with our children all day, and we don't want to pay people for the education that they pay for. So talk about that class. And there are tons of administrators that are making great wages, but they don't find it in their heart to try to figure out how to get you more money. Some, not all, but I'm just saying that that's the situation.
You're right. Thank you. And I know we got to wrap this up. Let me just, muchas gracias. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your words. And your words are powerful. Thank you so much. When I think about education, you're right. To me, if there's anyone who is a leader in our country, it's a lot. Teachers, are on the front lines. The ones who care, yourself, the woman in the back. I think it's horrific that teachers get paid so little, not just here, but around the country. My wife is also, she's not just a dance and choreographer, but she's also a teacher. She taught in the New York City public school system for years. Y'all know the stories. The teachers have to buy their own supplies. There's too many kids in the classroom. She now teaches at a private school, and the discrepancy in the resources is incredible. You know what I mean? And even the food choices that the kids get or don't get. And I think that there is something profoundly wrong with our society too. And I'm a big sports fan, but when athletes are getting millions of dollars and teachers are getting $20,000, $30,000, I mean, where are our priorities at? But it goes back to being organized. What I love is seeing all the teacher strikes that have existed over the last couple of weeks around the country. And I think we've got to keep going because you all have a lot of power. You know what I mean? And I think about my English teacher in high school, the one who really said to me, I'm going to leave it here, that I could be a writer, Mrs. Lillian Williams. When she died in her late 70s, 4 generations of students showed up at her funeral because of the profound impact that she had on young people. You know what I mean? I thank you all for being teachers because it's a serious commitment, given that you're not paid well. I think it's unfair, and I hope that folks here hear you. And to me, I make it a point to be connected to my friends who are principals, who are teachers, who are educators. And it could be something. I mean, like something we did recently in Brooklyn. You know, I asked several politicians. Said, look, these kids in these poor areas need to see the Black Panther film. Let's pay for this. And what I remember, the thing that struck me more as much as the kids was the teachers were just happy to have some relief, some support. You know what I mean? And and that's why I said to the brother over there, if y'all who are able don't go to schools in our communities, you don't have to live in East Oakland, but you should be showing up in East Oakland and West Oakland to these schools. Yes. They need to see us. In Richmond, wherever they are, if I can come places, I don't even live in California, but I go to schools as often as I can when I'm out here. Support these teachers, and they should not have to fight by themselves for a better wage because that's unfair to them, And so thank you for saying that because I really feel in my heart, that's part of the reason why I call this tour what it is, because education is the key to everything, and you all are there on the front lines, and we can't let these teachers continue to do this by themselves. We come from teachers are a part of the communities, and they were connected to everyone else. And it's almost like we've left teachers out there by themselves. And the pattern has been, it seems, in the last several years, if I'm not mistaken, is to blame the teachers for everything. Yes. Which is insane. It's all the teachers' fault. No, when I was growing up, we did take tests, but not the amount of tests that exist now. And you know how I know it's whack, all these tests now? Because I've also taught freshman or first-year English at colleges and universities. Students, no matter what their racial background, said we didn't learn basic grammar because they were too busy testing us over and over again. Yes. You see what I'm saying? Yes. So let's support public school teachers, please. Because this education, public school teachers, but also ones who are culturally competent and actually love our children. That's what I think about. So thank y'all. Thank y'all so much. Ambassador, thank you. Thank you, Oakland Museum.
Thank you so much, Kevin Powell. Give it up to Kevin one more time. Give it up to your questions because, as you can see, it was part of the platform. It drove this and truly exemplified what an education of us meant. On behalf of Oakland Museum of California, thank you so much for coming to the Education of Us tour with Kevin Powell on our Friday nights at Oakland Museum. Please get home safely. Please, let's continue these conversations in our lives with our families and our communities because we are the change. We are the change that we want to see. Thank you so much. Good night.